Hello, everyone. We're just waiting a couple of minutes to wait for other people to come and join us on the webinar. So if you can bear with us. Okay, just 2 more minutes so we can get started. Yes. Thank you. Okay, I guess we'll just go ahead and get started. Let me go ahead and get this out of my way. Okay, well, hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Maria Fuentes. I'm the Public Health Emergency Manager for Canutillo Independent School District. So part of my role is to ensure that everybody gets information and new education sessions about new topics that I think are very important and require like urgent attention from different areas here in El Paso. So trying to reach out to every one of you and provide that information on different topics that I know it's of great interest of you and a lot of people have suggested. We thought that the Alzheimer's and dementia is one of those topics that require a lot of information. Sometimes we are unable to recognize if those signs that we are watching in our family members are actually signs of maybe an Alzheimer's. So I think it's great that we have information from the experts, and also sometimes we have a person living with a condition and we don't know who to reach out to. We don't know the information. We don't know that type of resources that maybe we can get. We don't know who to call, maybe when we're going through a type of stress or need, or how to deal with that particular situation. So I am very happy today to talk and give this topic of Alzheimer, and to have to welcome the Alzheimer's Association, who like very, very nice and kind of you decided to join us today to help us with this information. Today I have David Hernandez. He's Executive Director of the Alzheimer's Association West Texas Chapter. Hello, David, and welcome. I have also Brenda Mason. She's the Development Program Manager of the association. And I also have Maria Llama. She's the Director of Programs and Services at the association. Later on, we will also have Felipa Solis. She's the Executive Director of the El Paso Pro Musica, who will also give a little bit of information and show us some videos on the power that music that has on people living with dementia. I know there's a lot of research going on, so we will hear more about that. So welcome you all. Thank you so much for joining us today. I don't know if you want, each one of you want to introduce yourselves and give us a little bit of your role in the association.
Thank you for having us. I'm David Hernandez. I'm the Executive Director for the West Texas Chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. And it's a pleasure to be here today with my team, Brenda and Maria. And I think we all have a place in the program where we'll be sharing information with you, and we'll do our introductions as we go through the presentation, because there's lots of information to share. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started.
Awesome. All right.
So about the Alzheimer's Association, the Alzheimer's Association leads the way to end Alzheimer's and all other dementia by accelerating global research, driving risk reduction and early detection, and maximizing quality care and support. In a nutshell, it's a little bit what we do. And go to the next slide and we can share our mission and vision. So our vision is a world without Alzheimer's and all other dementia. And our mission, the Alzheimer's Association, leads the way again to end Alzheimer's and all other dementia by accelerating global research, driving risk reduction and early detection, and maximizing quality care and support. So in care and support, we work on a national and local level to provide that much needed care and support for all those who are living with Alzheimer's and all other dementia. And we'll talk a little bit about this as we go through the presentation. We also are the largest nonprofit funder of Alzheimer's research. We're committed to advancing vital research towards methods of treatment, prevention, and ultimately, we'd like to find a cure for the disease. We also are very strong in advocacy. The association is the leading voice for Alzheimer's disease advocacy, fighting for critical research and care initiatives at the state and federal level. So a little bit about our history. We were founded in 1980 by a group of family caregivers and individuals who recognized the need for an organization that would unite caregivers and provide support to those facing Alzheimer's and advance research into the disease. Our founder is Jerome H. Stone, who was a true visionary for the Alzheimer's movement. He was our founding president. And his personal connection to the disease was his wife, Evelyn, who was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 1970. And at that time, there was very little information about Alzheimer's, even among the medical community. And with that drive and determination, Mr. Stone took a disease that was cloaked in silence and helped to create a global conversation. Next slide. So a little bit about our facts and figures. Every year we update our, just based on our current research, we update our facts and figures at a national and state level. And so this year, which was released just a couple of weeks back, we have these figures to share with you. So more than 6 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's. Between 2000 and 2019, deaths from heart disease decreased 7.3%, while deaths from Alzheimer's disease actually increased by 145%. 1 in 3 seniors dies with Alzheimer's or another dementia. Next slide. So at the state level, more than 400,000 Texans are living with Alzheimer's. By 2025, an estimated 490,000 Texans will have Alzheimer's, which is a 22.5% increase. In 2019, 10,101 Texans died from Alzheimer's, and which is a 217.2% increase since 2000. Next slide. So we'll take a few more statistics to give an idea of how many people are impacted by this disease. So there are over 11 million Americans providing unpaid care for people with Alzheimer's or other dementias. These caregivers provided more than 16 billion hours of care valued at nearly $272 billion. About 25% of dementia caregivers are sandwich generation caregivers, meaning that they care not only for an aging parent, but also for children under the age of 18. In 2022, Alzheimer's and other dementias will cost the nation $321 billion. By 2050, these costs could rise to nearly $1 trillion. And so the statistics, these are startling facts, and it's impacting not just those living with disease, but all Americans. It impacts the workforce, it impacts the family structure, and even in these couple of years of COVID, we're seeing more and more who are affected by the disease. Next slide. So among chronic diseases, Alzheimer's disease is the 6th leading cause of death in the United States. It kills more people than breast cancer and prostate cancer combined. Okay.
And David, I'm sorry, is it
Yes.
okay to ask you, and yesterday I was asking Brenda as well
Sure.
in front of the students, right? So the viewers can also understand a little bit more about this topic. We see that the people of Alzheimer, right, is like the cause of death, but what really do people with Alzheimer's die of? Like what happens that lead to death, this dementia?
So that's a very good question. So as we'll see in the next few slides, we'll look a little bit more look into more how Alzheimer's and dementia affects the brain. And ultimately what causes death is the body not able to do those day-to-day tasks that allows us to live. We lose the ability, Alzheimer's affects memory, which also, as it progresses, will affect our ability to swallow, our ability to move. And so with that, you have more issues that arise, aspiration, which would lead to ammonia, or, a cardiac arrest. It also, you have individuals with bed sores, and it leads to other chronic ailments such as sepsis and such. So it sparks other issues that ultimately will unfortunately lead to death.
So Alzheimer not only affects, I guess, memory, right? Like memory,
Right.
but other, I guess it also loses the memory, but of movement, of other coordination, of etc., of essential,
Yes.
I guess, body functions. All right, thank you.
One of the things that's pretty interesting, and it's a little scary, is that Alzheimer's is a women's issue. Not only are women more likely to have Alzheimer's, they're also most likely to be caregivers of those living with the disease. If we look at the figures here, nearly 2/3 of those with Alzheimer's are women. So and based on our last study, that accounts to 3.9 million people are women who are living with the disease. And more than 1/3 of dementia caregivers are daughters, are individuals who are caring for their mother or their father, and that's pretty striking. I know, like in my family, I cared for my mother. My mother cared for both her parents as well as my father's parents, and so that was it truly affected her, so that's pretty interesting. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about dementia and what it is and what Alzheimer's is. So if you think of an umbrella, dementia is like this umbrella. It's a general term for the loss of memory and other thinking abilities that are severe enough to interfere with daily life. Alzheimer's is a type of dementia. This is because there are many types of dementia. There's vascular dementia, which accounts for 20 to 30%. Lewy body cell dementia, which is 10 to 25%. And frontal temporal dementia, 10 to 15%. There are other types of dementia. I mean, these are the top 4 types of dementia, Alzheimer's being 50 to 75%. Other people, like in my own family, my aunt is affected by dementia related to MS. My grandmother had dementia and she had Parkinson's. So it's pretty incredible, the different types of dementia, and Alzheimer's just being the most popular of all the related impairments. So a little bit about the brain. Your brain is the most powerful organ. It weighs only about 3 pounds, and it has a texture similar to firm jelly. The brain has 3 main parts. So we'll look at in the next few slides. So we have the cerebrum. The cerebrum fills up most of the skull. It is involved in remembering, problem solving, thinking, and feeling. It also controls movement. The next part of the brain is the cerebellum, and this sits at the back of your head under the cerebrum, and it controls coordination and balance. Then you have the brain stem, which sits beneath the cerebrum in front of your cerebellum, and it connects the brain to the spinal cord, and it controls automatic functions such as breathing, digestion, heart rate, and blood pressure. So we got to think of supply lines. So your brain is nourished by one of your body's richest networks of blood vessels. When you're thinking hard, your brain may be using up to 50% of fuel and oxygen. That's pretty incredible. So when we're sitting down, we're doing a test, we're thinking of, we're balancing our checkbook, or we're reading a story, we're really working our brain, and we're consuming about 50% of oxygen. When we're breathing, that a lot of blood goes up into our brain to nourish it with lots of nutrients and oxygen-rich blood. So here, with each heartbeat, arteries carry about 20 to 25% of the blood to our brain, where billions of cells use about 20% of the oxygen and fuel your blood carries. The whole vessel network includes veins and capillaries in addition to arteries. Next slide. So when we think of the cortex, these are the thinking wrinkles. Your brain's wrinkled surface is a specialized outer layer of the cerebrum called the cortex. Scientists have mapped the cortex by identifying areas strongly linked to certain functions. So we have areas that are linked to sight, areas that are linked to sound, some areas are linked to smells, others are linked to thoughts, problem solving, and planning, others for forming and storing memories and voluntary movements. So there are different parts of the brain that affect different things that we use in our body. So when we think of the brain not only as a whole, but also as a left brain and right brain. Your brain is divided into the right and left halves. Experts are not certain so much how the left brain and right brain may differ in function. However, they do know that the area for language is on the left side of the brain. The left half controls movement on the body's right side of the brain. So whenever you hear someone, unfortunately, may have a stroke on the left side of the brain, they might lose the ability to use the right side of their body, or vice versa. So it's crisscrossed. So then we'll look at what makes up the brain. So if we take a microscope and we zoom in even more so, we see the neuron forest, as I like to refer to it. And so this is at the cellular level. An adult brain contains about 100 billion nerve cells. They look like little trees, these with little branches, and the branches connect the nerve cells on more than 100 trillion points. And scientists call this dense branching network a neuron forest. Neurons, they're the chief type of cell destroyed by Alzheimer's disease. Okay. Signals traveling through the neuron forest form the basis of memories, thoughts, and feelings. So you kind of think of it like electrical wires, and there's like electrical current that goes in through one branch, and it's picked up by another branch. And what these are doing is it's controlling, all these signals. They form memories, thoughts, and they move, these little tiny electrical charges. Nerve cells connect to one another at synapses. So here we'll see a close-up of what it would look like. How these little chemicals transfer from one cell to another with little like electrical charges. When a charge reaches a synapse, it may trigger release of tiny bursts of chemicals called neurotransmitters. So we have signal coding. So what we see here is the positron emission tomography, a PET scan, as it's commonly referred to. On the left shows typical patterns of brain activity associated with reading words, hearing words, thinking about words, and saying words. So these electrical currents can be picked up by some of our technology. And it's kind of interesting, the PET scan, one of the things that we do as an association is we accelerate research. And with the PET scan to identify Alzheimer's and dementia was one of these research projects that we seeded. And because it used to be where you couldn't diagnose somebody with Alzheimer's until after death, post-mortem. And so through our efforts to seed a research project at the University of Pittsburgh, we were able to have the ability to diagnose Alzheimer's early on during someone's life. So here we see two images of the brain, and we see a normal brain without disease. You see that it's whole. There's wrinkles, and it looks lighter in color. Then to the right, we see the brain affected with advanced Alzheimer's, and you see that the wrinkles are not there, and they're more, there's more pronounced craters and shrinkage of the brain. Over time, when the neurons quit working right, we see that there's tissue loss. Our body has this ability to get rid of things that we don't use anymore. And so our body actually, gets rid of all these cells that we're not using in the brain, and that's what causes the shrinkage. So here we can see overlapping the changes in size. A normal brain, you see it very light colored, and then the Alzheimer's brain, a lot smaller, and it's the one in the front. So under the microscope, Alzheimer's tissue has fewer nerve cells and synapses than a healthy brain. Plaques, which are abnormal clusters of protein fragments, build up between nerve cells. And these plaques kind of get in the way of passing those neurotransmitters. And we see dead and dying nerve cells contain tangles, which are made up of twisted strands of another protein. Scientists see these terrible effects under a microscope. And they're not absolutely sure what causes the cell death and tissue loss in the Alzheimer's brain, but the plaques and tangles in the figures are pretty much the prime suspects of preventing us from that normal brain function. Okay, so here we see progression through the brain. The earliest Alzheimer's changes may begin 20 years or more before diagnosis. Mild to moderate Alzheimer's stages generally last from 2 to 10 years. A person with severe Alzheimer's may live from 1 to 5 years. And then here a little bit more about plaques. Plaques form when protein pieces called beta amyloid clump together. Beta amyloid comes from a larger protein found in the fatty membrane surrounding nerve cells. Beta amyloid is chemically sticky and gradually builds up into plaques. The most damaging form of beta amyloid may be groups of a few pieces rather than the plaques themselves. The small clumps may block cell-to-cell signaling at synapses. They get in the way of those signals that are going back and forth. And they may also activate immune system cells that trigger inflammation. So we hear about inflammation and how that's really bad for the body. And that inflammation triggers, the body to devour, to get rid of those disabled cells. And so again, that's what causes the shrinkage.
And David, are there any biological markers that can be detected when this inflammatory process is going on, like during the early stages?
Great question. So yes, there are many research projects right now that are looking into the biomarkers, and so that we can have a test, just like we take a blood test to identify if we have diabetes or cardiovascular disease or high cholesterol, things like that. Many researchers, there's several projects around the country who are working to develop that blood test.
But I guess that's still, I'm so sorry. But I guess still part of the research phase. It's not something that can be still.
Not yet. We don't have that yet. We're very close. We're very close. In fact, one of our researchers at Texas Tech in Lubbock, who has been seeded by some of by the association, she is working on biomarkers right now. And her husband, who is also a researcher at the Texas Tech Health Science Center in Lubbock, he's also working on another biomarker. So it's kind of interesting how different researchers are coming from different directions to identify those biomarkers and coming up with a test.
Now, are they at least coming up with a similar biomarkers with the same ones,
Yes.
or everybody's coming up with
It's a little different, but one is working more on the nutrition aspect and,
Okay.
and the prevalence among women, and the other one, he's working more on it's a different approach. I wouldn't even feel comfortable talking more about it because I'm not sure the whole extent of his research study, but yeah, so it's interesting.
So now that we're getting there. Thank you.
Yes. A little bit more about tangles and healthy areas. We have orderly parallel strands which deliver key materials to cells. A protein called tau helps keep the strands straight, so that helps the messaging go without interruption. When tangles are forming, nutrients and other supplies like oxygen can no longer move through the cells, or those little energies, electrical currents can't move freely, which eventually causes the cell to die. Tau collapses into twisted strands, and then they can't stay straight, so they naturally, again, they disintegrate. Okay. So the earliest, a lot of times physicians will stage Alzheimer's, and usually the earliest Alzheimer's stages affect learning and memory, and thinking and planning. And this is, and we'll go into that a little bit further. My colleague Maria Llamas will talk a little bit about the warning signs. But these are things where it's not just misplacing your keys; it's misplacing your keys, putting them in an odd place, and not having that ability to problem solve, like back to trace your steps. Where did I come in from? When I came in after the grocery shopping, I went to the kitchen, then I went to the den, and those early stages, you just can't figure that out. You have no clue, and so we'll talk a little bit more about that. But these are the earliest, I guess, symptoms of the disease. Next slide. So when you have when the individual is in the mild to moderate stage of Alzheimer's, you start seeing things that the speaking, understanding speech becomes difficult. Sense of where your body is in relation to objects around you. So you'll see someone have the inability to drive, to walk in the house. Things that may not, step in the den that was never an issue may now become an issue because they can't judge where they're stepping, or walking, from one end of the house to the other. Things start getting very difficult. And then severe Alzheimer's, we talked a little bit at the beginning of the presentation, what leads to ultimately death. The individual, starts losing bodily functions like the ability to swallow, which can be really dangerous because when you have saliva or food, getting trapped in the lungs, which would lead to pneumonia and eventually maybe even sepsis. Other comorbidities, become develop as a result of the Alzheimer's. Okay. And with that, I will hand it over to Maria Llamas. And before that, are there any questions? Does anyone have questions?
And anybody's welcome to type the questions so we can read it out to them at any time.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to go over the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's. Can everybody hear me? Okay, good. So number 1 is memory loss that disrupts daily life. Something that would be the opposite of this, or typical age-related change, would be if you forget something, but then you remember it later. So maybe you forget where you left your keys, but then it'll take you maybe 5 minutes to retrace and remember where you left them. Number 2 is challenges in planning or solving problems. And the opposite of that, or a typical age-related change, would be making occasional errors when managing finances or household bills. But it's just, like I said, very occasional, sometimes, not all the time. Number 3 is difficulty completing familiar tasks. And a typical age-related change would be occasionally needing help to use the microwave settings, or you forget how to record a TV show. Number 4 is confusion with time or place. And a typical age-related change would be when you're confused about today's date, but then you figure it out as the day progresses, or you just remember what day we're on. Number 5 is understanding visual images and spatial relationships. A typical age-related change would be if your vision would change due to cataracts. Number 6 is new problems with words in speaking or writing. And a typical age-related change would be trouble finding the right word. Number 7 is misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace those steps. In comparison to a typical age-related change, misplacing things from time to time, but being able to retrace the steps to find them. Number 8 is decreased or poor judgment. And the typical age-related change would be making a bad decision once, but not doing it again. Number 9 is withdrawal from work or social activities. And a typical age-related change would be sometimes feeling uninterested in family or social obligations. But like I said, again, it's just sometimes, not all the time. And the last one is changes in mood or personality. Compared to a typical age-related change, developing very specific ways of doing things and becoming irritated when a routine is disrupted. Any questions on the 10 warning signs?
I guess one question, Maria, will be like, yes. I know maybe we all have a little bit forgotten this and that, or sometimes like, what did I do or where did I leave this? But when does it come a point that it's a concern that, you know, like I should go see a doctor because this is not normal?
Okay, so I'll elaborate more on number 1, which was the most common sign in early stage Alzheimer's. It's when you forget recently learned information. So maybe if you had a little class that you went to and you forget about what you learned or what you heard that same day or the next year, like, I just completely forgot what I learned. Forgetting important dates or events, like maybe your birthday or a family member's birthday. When you notice that maybe they're asking the same questions and you answered maybe 5 minutes ago, but it's just that person asking the same question over and over again. And when you need to rely on memory aids or a family member to be telling you the upcoming events, upcoming meetings, or important information that you need to know. And it could be even reminding you of paying your bill.
Okay, and when we're talking about forgetting these situations, are we talking about short-term events or long-term events?
Sure.
Sure, usually. Okay, and if that's okay, I have a question that did it disappear? I can just read it to you. I cannot see it anymore. I don't know if.
Let me try to open the chat and see.
Somebody posted a question here.
I can read it to you. It says, are the stages the same, early stage the same as mild cognitive impairment?
I'm going to say no, and I'll let Dave elaborate on that one.
All right. Well, actually, it just depends. You know, I think what we mild cognitive impairment is what researchers are looking at. You know, which eventually somebody with that they have a high risk of developing Alzheimer's or another dementia. I think the technicality is that there's not a firm diagnosis, and I think that's when you know, a lot of times when you do go to the physician and you get a diagnosis of having mild cognitive impairment, MCI, you know, they will, you know, pretty much tell you that there's you're at higher risk of developing dementia. And so, you know, there are things that you can do to slow the progression, things like, exercising, eating nutritious diet, if you're overweight, losing weight, if you're tend to live a sedentary lifestyle, become more active, encouraging you to socialize, meet with friends, doing what we call brain exercises, which would be like studying, reading, learning a language, playing games that involve a little bit more strategy, like chess, or even others, like simple ones like crossword puzzles or things that will get your brain working. So I think you are at high risk, and certainly some of the stages could, or someone in the early stages, it could mimic MCI. But I think that's where you would have that conversation with your physician. We always encourage, when you start developing some, or your loved one is developing some of these symptoms that are not typical aging, to really go see a physician, have that conversation with them.
Dave, we have a question. She might have missed it, or he, but what is the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's?
So the difference is dementia, we think of it as an umbrella. It's dementia is a decline in cognitive abilities and like thinking, memory, and Alzheimer's is just a type of dementia. It's one of the most popular types of dementia that are out there. But you have other dementia, particularly like there's vascular dementia, which results with poor circulation, or having a stroke. It's when there's low oxygen levels to the brain. You have Parkinson's related dementia, you have MS related dementia, you have Lewy body cell, frontal temporal dementia. So these are all different types of dementia, Alzheimer's being the most popular.
And
I'm so sorry. For example, these 10 warning signs, do they apply to all the different types of dementia, or are they more specific for Alzheimer's?
I would say they apply for all types of dementia, and everybody's different. You might see one person just having the ability, start losing, unable to recall dates. And another person may manifest in changes in mood or personality. In some, there's different warning signs. So I think as soon as you see a remarkable difference in a loved one or yourself, please see a physician.
Another question, why are women more likely to develop Alzheimer's or dementia?
That's a really good question. There's different schools of thought out there. So one of the reasons why, some researchers feel women are at higher risk is because they tend to live longer than men. And so one of the greatest risks of developing dementia is age. And so since women tend to live longer, there's a higher prevalence in those diagnosed versus men who don't live as long. Another school of thought that's out there is that women tend to be more verbal and even seek healthcare from a physician, whereas men might not be. They may be more reserved, and so it doesn't mean that they don't have dementia. They're just not being diagnosed.
Okay, another question, with vascular dementia, would massage therapy be useful?
That would be a good question for your physician. I see the benefits of massage therapy is stress reduction or stress management, which of course, which is beneficial to all chronic diseases. If you can manage stress, you can certainly live a better lifestyle, a more quality of life. But I would definitely talk to your physician about that.
I think that's it for the questions. The next slide would be Ms. Solis.
Hello, good afternoon. We hope you're doing wonderfully well. I'm Felipa Solis. I am the Executive Director of El Paso Pro Musica, and it's an absolute joy to be with you here today. I am, however, going to try, let's see. Yes, I think I have it. Aha, I'm going to begin with a little music for you. Bear with me as I think I did it. I think I'm there. Hold on. You are sharing the screen. I wanted to share that with you. Wonderful. Mr. Bailey, Zul Bailey, our artistic director, couldn't join us today, but I wanted you to.
I can turn anyone
What am I
into a
doing?
beach bum.
Hello.
YouTube might still be on.
Families together for
Here
a
we go.
living.
Did I do that wrong? What am I doing?
I make memories for people I don't know yet.
I don't know what I'm doing.
I think the YouTube is
Anyway,
still on, right?
good. Shared.
Okay, so.
I am a verbal host.
No. All right. Okay, so here, maybe that was it. Ooh, okay, I'm not
Okay, yeah.
very technically savvy yet, in spite
Google
of a
Fi,
2-year.
the phone plan by
Oh,
Google.
now what's happening?
Save big on the new Samsung Galaxy S22 series.
What
with
would someone
cinematic
recommend
video,
to me for
Ultra
me to
bright
do?
display.
Do
and
you
a
have your browser open? You can just close it.
saving today.
Okay, there we go. I think it's, did I do it? You are screen sharing. Stop share.
No, just
Maybe
uh,
close the-
close
Yeah.
YouTube, please.
What's that?
If you can please close YouTube
Okay, so I just close YouTube. So
at the top.
The window. The top.
There you go.
I think I've closed YouTube. Okay, so stop share and hit stop share, correct? Okay, there we are. Okay, thank you. Oh my goodness, because that's what happens. I rely on other people to help share, but that was just a little bit of a glitch. In any event, that was a beautiful piece of music that was actually written by a woman named Maria van Paradis, and she was a contemporary of Mozart. What Zool loves about that particular piece, and that piece was built during the pandemic, specifically for patients who were in hospice, who had been suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia, and who, upon listening to it, you could see there was such a response, there was such a familiarity in their eyes suddenly. These were people who could not get any sort of visitation otherwise because of the pandemic. And what was very interesting about the piece that made such a connection for so many patients that it touched was the fact that it was repetitious. And that was what we found very interesting. So we used that particular video for sharing with some of our centers such as White Acres, Monte Vista, and this sort of thing, where the repetitiveness of the music was very contagious, if you will. It was very accepted, and the patients, you could see and feel a reaction when we were on Zoom. So I think our discussion today is based on the fact that music is designed to soothe, to heal, to comfort, to inspire. So many things that David and Maria were talking about is so interesting from our vantage point, because those cognitive motor skills that are being utilized, music can still sort of continue to permeate. And so with that said, it's been wonderful to be able to collaborate with the Alzheimer's Association of West Texas to provide videos to soothe, heal, and comfort, and other entities in our community that are based in caring for senior citizens and caring for those people who do suffer from Alzheimer's and dementia, because as we have learned, it's not necessarily just the senior citizen who is affected. And so the music, the repetitiveness of it, the comfort that it brings. I could see, until I messed with the share button, that I could see faces, and there is a soothing aha moment. And it seems that with all of our exposure, with all of our sharing of music, whether it is via Zoom, whether it is via live stream or in person, you see a reaction. One of the greatest reactions was in one of our centers, where a group of brass players were here from the Johns Hopkins University Peabody Institute. And it was Veterans Day, and they were playing all of the themes of Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. And it was so incredible because there were so many gentlemen in the audience who clearly had been in some sort of armed services. And they were in walkers, they were in wheelchairs, and it was overwhelming to watch their caregivers and the nurses on hand react, because when they heard the individual tune that they could just understand and reflect, and they were so familiar with, because it was such a part of their life and their universe, they all managed, whether it was walker or a wheelchair with help, managed to stand up and salute. which was such an overwhelming moment for all of us who were there. But you could see cognitively how the music has been a part of their universe since probably they were in their late teens. And yet, no matter what it is in their life now that can't be remembered or can't be transposed into real time, the music was able to take them to that place of wonder, that place where they accomplished so much, that place of unity with their country, that it was so wonderful to see that cognitive response. So we hope as an organization to continue to have a relationship with the Alzheimer's Association of West Texas and to help provide musicians to provide that very comfort that is so vital. Even for Zul Bailey, for those of you who have heard him perform and have heard him speak, he had a grandmother who lived to be 106. And for over 15 years, when she was in assisted living, he was able to go every year, whether it was her birthday, Christmas, and perform for her and to perform for those residents around her. And it was so wonderful because as she became older and she was not able to recognize so many people, even within her family, Zul's presence with the music reminded her that that was her grandson. And that's what he did. He played the cello. And it was really very special for him as a human being, because performers have so many interesting outlets and interactions and exchanges with their audiences. But when it's someone who's so close to you and you see that what you do makes that difference and touches that life, that makes everything worthwhile. And you realize that all the hard work that paid off in being a musician and choosing music as a career choice, which oftentimes can go either way, but it's those little moments that make so much of a difference. So that's why I wanted to play that very special piece for you that was created specifically for the pandemic, that was selected specifically by Zul as something that senior citizens listening to can reflect upon, can soothe, can calm, and yet there was the repetition. So it just didn't stop. It happens again, and another movement happens again. And that piece is only 3 minutes and 19 seconds. It took me a minute to figure out how to get us back to normal, but it was a way for so many people to connect so positively. So we hope that we can continue to provide music to soothe, heal, comfort, and inspire. And also the beauty of it all is that the music also is several tiered in that the caregivers, family members, everyone around who are witness to this music and see these reactions are also soothed so much, because as we all know, one of the great problems we have to deal with is how to deal with the caregiver who's literally working 24/7 in trying to ensure that their parents / grandparents / patients are being taken care of. And in that glorious moment, the music is making that difference. So it's our hope and it is our quest. It's not to say we want to, we're saying we will. El Paso Pro Musica will continue to provide music at every juncture that it's appropriate, that it works well, and that can provide that soothing and comfort that is thoroughly proven to be so effective for patients with dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Does anyone have any questions?
So playing music with your loved one might be a good idea, especially when someone is stressed. So, when someone has Alzheimer's or dementia and they get agitated, What would you recommend as far as that goes? Playing music.
Playing music, it is very, very interesting because there can be works by Bach that are soothing and calming if they love classical music, or it could be the music of their generation. So what's interesting is we have walked into centers where maybe prior to the pandemic, there's the jitterbug and boogie woogie, because these are people who were actively involved in the 1950s. We recently went to a center where in the hallway, which makes everyone kind of feel, wow, the Beatles, because that was music that was comforting to them at a time. So, I mean, certainly El Paso Pro Musica can always provide links for you and such, but music that's comforting in a lifetime, in a time, it can be people who had classical music in their lives, or loved going to concerts, or loved going to symphonies, or listening to chamber music, or yet it could be something as simple as listening to music by the Beatles, because that takes the patient to that place of recognition and comfort. So I think it's very important to provide them with music that they can recollect, that they can identify with, and that will take them to a place of calm. And it also takes everyone around them to that place of calm in seeing the patient feel that.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ms. Elise, for the wonderful message and all the wonderful information for all of our viewers. And it's beautiful. Like for me, like I would like notice some a little bit Mozart in the background, like some influence. So
isn't that wonderful? So you
yes.
must have a musical background. That's fantastic. And here was a woman at this time, which was absolutely unheard of. And yet she was a contemporary of Mozart. So it's very beautiful. And it's such beautiful music that was written so long ago, but yet applies today. So it just depends on the moment, the mood, and what provides that comfort and recollection with music.
Well, that was beautiful.
Thank you so much for allowing me to join you. And of course, we will continue our connection and our collaboration with the Alzheimer's Association of West Texas as long as possible.
Of course. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. I don't know if anybody else has any questions for the panelists, because now is the moment. I don't see any questions. I don't know if you guys can see on your end. Okay, but I guess that's it. Well, thank you so much for all the wonderful information. It was an honor having all of you, Ms. Elise and David, Maria. Thank you so much, Brenda, for giving the information. Also coming yesterday to talk to the students and to get them involved. You know, I think right now it's very important to talk to the young generations and to be able to recognize all these warning signs, and also what we can do. You know, when is it a point that we have to go to visit a doctor, or even, you know, like, where can I call? Where can I reach out for support? Sometimes I think that's the most basic information that we need to have at the palm of our hands. So thank you all for joining us today and yesterday as well.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you all.
Have a wonderful day.
Good.